So Summerslam 2026 is finally in the books, and I'm going to basically go through this night one of this event. I'm going to tell you what I liked, what I didn't like, and where I think things may kind of go in the future. So we basically opened the night with Io Sky versus Liv Morgan. This was kind of like a match that I was kind of like expecting to kind of like open the night. We had quite a lot. I thought that this was a pretty good match from an in-ring perspective. I kind of think that Io Sky kind of like got like a best offenses, the best spots in this match. It's not me being biased as a EO Sky fan, but I just kind of like generally the way I saw it. We saw EO Sky basically performing a moonsault on the Judgment Day. It kind of like this spot kind of like it made me a chuckle, because basically after performing the moonsault on the Judgment Day, we basically had we saw like EO Sky kind of like look around a little like perplexed, as if like kind of like looking for Liv Morgan, as much as they kind of say like, where is she gone? Liv Morgan was kind of like already like back in the ring this time. We also had like another spot where Io Sky performed this Spanish Fly on Liv Morgan. We basically had another spot where Io Sky performed this German suplex to Io Sky on the edge of a ring, following this up like with a bullet train that basically sandwiched Liv Morgan's head between the bullet train and the ring post, which looked like kind of gnarly. But yeah, as I like predicted in my predictions video, we did end up with Liv Morgan picking up a win here. We had like numerous spots throughout the match where Liv Morgan was trying to apply the Oblivion, and Io Sky kept on like countering it. In the final like stages of this match, we had Liv Morgan trying to apply the Oblivion again, only to see that Io Sky performed this like flip through it, only to be caught by the Oblivion again, to pick up a 1-2-3. So yeah, no Stephanie Valkyrie return here, so I guess that she's still kind of like out by injury. In terms of like where things go, I still think that they're keen to just basically keep the title on Liv Morgan until Stephanie Valkyrie returns, and then just kind of like pick up that feud again. I think that's the purpose of it. I do kind of like, I did kind of go into this match feeling like it was a little bit of a lose-lose. I mean, I was like interested in the match just basically because of the sheer stature of Liv Morgan and Io Sky, and the sheer talent on display, and I had no doubt in my mind that the two could like put on a solid match, which they did. But I just think in terms of like when you look at towards what may lay ahead, I think it's tricky, because obviously like Liv Morgan's title run has just been like kind of like non-existent. This is the first defense that she's had in like, and she's had it like over like 3 months. There's nothing really necessarily that immediately springs to mind that just makes me think that that's going to change. And again, I kind of feel if this had gone the other way, and if Theo had won, I'd kind of like feel the same. Obviously, I'd feel great as like any kind of an EO fan, but I would generally feel the same, because I feel like Obviously, like Liv Morgan, you have to say, is like one of the MVPs of like WWE. So I kind of feel if you've kind of done nothing with her title run, what makes anyone think that you would do anything different with an EO title run? In fact, like the last title run that EO had, like you did like none, like very little with it. So in that sense, it did kind of like feel like a lose-lose. But yeah, I do kind of like feel like a play is just to kind of like keep the title on Liv Morgan until Stephanie Valkyrie returns, and then we're just going to basically pick that feud back up. I think that's a play here. I don't know where we go with like Io Sky from here, but obviously I'm hoping that she's not one of these that just kind of like falls into the void. She's far too much of a great talent for that. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, just to, kind of like I don't want to get too cynical, too bogged down in kind of like looking at the kind of like great beyond. I want to kind of like judge this just basically kind of like what we got here in this event. And here in this event, yeah, I thought it was a fine opening match. So next up, we got the 6-man tag team match between LA Knight, Royce Keys, and Solo Sikoa taking on the Usos and Jacob for two. I thought that this was like a fine match. I think like as is always so often the case with these 6-man tag team matches, I didn't think that there was a particularly high stakes to this. I felt that it was kind of like why there wasn't really any necessary real jeopardy. It was kind of like more one of those bragging rights. So I feel like if there were any matches on the card that maybe WWE decided to like trim for time, then I feel like this is kind of like one of the ones that maybe decided that, and that did kind of like feel like that was the case. I think that on the build to this match, I think it's been quite interesting because I feel like it's been one of the, in my predictions video, I criticized like quite a few aspects of the various builds that we've had to this SummerSlam, but I feel like the build to this match has been like one of the better ones. I feel it's been a build that's really kind of like allowed to a lot of the single players in it to kind of like really shine. None more so than the Solo Sikoa, who I think has just come over as like an absolute like comedic babyface, just got really totally over with a crowd. But yeah, I think like Royce Keys is I think it's done good for Royce Keys' character, and I think it's done good for LA Knight's character. And I think that you saw those little aspects kind of like playing out here, where the match was kind of like conducted, playing to those individual strengths. You had Solo Sikoa basically being the comedic guy. You had basically him kind of like laying out the Usos and Jacob for two and that, and doing these little kind of like comedic spots where he was kind of like showboating into the crowd, where he was basically like yeeting. There was at the opening of the match, he had kind of like knocked Jey Uso down, and he was kind of like doing the like one more time, and then like yeeting and stuff. He had done it with like Jacob for two as well, but basically when he was like showboating, Jacob for two basically just got like straight back up. That like made me a real chuckle. And then obviously we had Royce Keys enter the match, where it was basically really shown to really show his like physical dominance. I think that like one thing that needs to be mentioned here is like as so often is the case with the 6-man tag team match, there's usually a spot that that people kind of like start to anticipate, in the sense where they kind of like look at maybe two people in this 6-man tag team and go, we want to see those two face off, and there needs to be a kind of like a hold off, a kind of a build to that. And I feel like in this case, that spot was Jacob Fatu and Royce Keys, basically them being the most physical, kind of like dominant presences. Them being kind of like portrayed as kind of like the wrecking ball in each side. And ultimately, like, we finally got that, but I felt like it was a bit, when we did finally get to it, it was a little bit anticlimactic. We basically just had like a little like exchange in the moves before they both like kind of like tumbled over the barricade. So that felt like a little bit anticlimactic. So if I'm gonna kind of like be a little nitpicky, I would have liked to seen this, this must be elongated a little bit more, maybe with a little bit more to-in and throw-in between Royce Keys and Jacob Fatu. But on the whole, yeah, I thought it was, I mean, on the whole, just the main takeaways, I'm kind of like, as I pointed to in my predictions video, I'm just kind of like happy that Solace Sikoa didn't turn heel. Or join the bloodline. So yeah, I'm kind of like happy about that. So yeah, I'll take it. So next up we had the match between Gunther and Nick Aldis, and obviously this was a match that we were kind of like going into. We were quite a little bit intrigued because there were like I knew that there were like WWE fans that were maybe had seen Nick Aldis in the ring before. They maybe say like NWA and his time in Impact and all of that stuff. But for me personally, this was the first time I had seen Nick Aldis in the ring. I know that there was a case for like a lot of wrestling fans, so there was a certain intrigue going into this match. So I mean, I never felt that there was a doubt that Gunther was going to win, and I kind of like would go into it sort of feeling like that was the case for everybody. But maybe that wasn't, because after this match was over, there did seem to be like there were these camera shots of quite a lot of despairing fans at like Gunther winning. So maybe people did go, so maybe there were fans who kind of like who went into this feeling like Nick Aldis could win, but yeah, I never sort of thought that. I went into this match feeling like ultimately there were two things that needed to come out of this. Ultimately, I felt like we needed this match needed to kind of like really showcase what Nick Aldis still kind of like had in terms of like wrestling ability and in-ring ability. I think that it was imperative that he got some really good defenses, that Gunther really sold that really well, and that Gunther really kind of like got Nick Aldis over here, which I think ultimately is what we did have here. We had like quite a few really good spots. We basically had Nick Aldis basically taking this where Gunther had basically chopped him from the top rope, and it basically had sent Nick Aldis kind of like tumbling off the top rope outside to the ring area. We had Nick Aldis delivering a suplex, I think it might have been, off the top rope. I feel like, yeah, so I feel like with this match allowed Nick Aldis to get enough offense here to really kind of like showcase that, he still has quite a lot of in-ring ability. As I said in my like predictions video, I think that this was a match that really you can kind of like sideline the spectacle factor and just look at the human side of it and just think, wow, how great it is that Nick Aldis kind of like has this moment. And I feel like that that's ultimately like what we got here. I think, yeah, I think ultimately this match delivered everything that it needed to be. Ultimately, we did have Gunther picking up a win by basically tapping Nick Aldis out with a sleeper. Just prior to that, we had Gunther applying the sleeper hold, and then it basically looking like Nick Aldis was gonna get out of it before Gunther reverted back to it and kind of like made Nick Aldis tap out. There was a really nice little spot, kind of like post-match, where basically where Nick Aldis was basically greeted like with his wife and his kid, and it was just a really nice spot there. So next up we had Fatal Influence basically taking on the team of the Bella Twins and Paige. And again, I feel like if WWE were concerned about like time, this was maybe one of the matches that maybe they could have trimmed. This was the only real match from like night one that I went into, not really feeling like particularly a whole load of like investment in, and never really a whole load of intrigue in. So basically, yeah, I thought that the match was fine. I don't think it was a match I really kind of like outstayed its welcome a lot. We did basically have Fatal Influence ultimately picking up a win. As I predicted, I think that's particularly interesting because I feel like because this wasn't like for the tag team match, I think the title said, I feel like that kind of like gives an incentive to Fatal Influence in the world of kayfabe, where they can basically be really challenge Bellas for the tag team match. The interesting thing about this is like post match we did have the Bellas turn on the Page, which we kind of like saw coming. I was a little bit surprised that it was pulled trigger so early, but I always knew that I was kind of like, or had this feeling that it was kind of like just around the corner. It does sort of make me intrigued because I feel like if Fatal Influence basically do kind of like challenge Bellas for the tag team titles now, then um, then basically Rebellious turning on Paige is essentially turned them heel, so it's kind of like heel on heel, and which I personally don't have a problem with, but I know that's not necessarily always the way like WWE like to do things. I know that we had like CM Punk and Cody Rhodes here, which were like two baby faces, so but I think it's kind of like apples and oranges kind of like comparison, because you've just got because I think that in that case you just have the allure, the spectacle of just these two kind of like iconic figures kind of like going head to head. So I don't know. I don't know how they work. I think I've always been like confident that maybe the Fatal Influence are the ones to kind of dethrone the Bella Twins. And now that the Bella Twins have turned on Paige, I think maybe that plants a little bit of a seed into how that may happen. There could be we could basically have pay if we do see this kind of like being revisited, we could see maybe Paige basically get some sort of revenge here by basically intervening and costing the Bella Twins the title, allowing Fatal Influence to pick up a win. That's certainly a possibility. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I don't know how necessarily I like feel about that, because I feel like if you are going to give Fatal Influence this real push, and sometimes I think that that's just more effective and it just lands better. Um, if they kind of like do that on their own accord, we kind of like see this with like the Roman Reigns situation and the last title reign he had, where they're basically kind of like trying to address this whole idea of you had this, you had all of these accolades, but you only had it because of a bloodline. I think he kind of like maybe could, fall into kind of maybe the same sort of argument here. So yeah, I feel in the world of kayfabe, at least, I think that that it's totally feasible that maybe Paige gets her revenge and screws the Bellas over, allowing Fatal Influence to kind of dethrone them. But yeah, whether that kind of like really is beneficial in continuing this sort of Fatal Influence push, I'm not so sure. But yeah, I certainly feel like obviously the seeds are there. So next up we had Cody Rhodes and CM Punk, and this one surprised me in terms of just maybe the placement on the match card. Just the way the match card are kind of like unraveled. Because obviously CM Punk against Cody Rhodes is one of your biggest matches, and we knew that Oberfemi against Brock Lesnar in the Hell in a Cell was going to be one of your biggest matches. So I kind of like thought maybe they were going to kind of like maybe go with either CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, or Oberfemi and Brock Lesnar, and then maybe just have like the Bellas against Fatal Influence as a little bit of breather between the two, but obviously that wasn't the case. We went straight into it with CM Punk and Cody Rhodes, and I thought that this was a really solid match, a really fast-paced match. Lots of like no real kind of sustained offenses by either. It was just a very fast-paced kind of to in and throw in kind of match. We did have this match was basically announced with this like little Street Fighter kind of like arcade promo, which I actually liked. It's not usually the sort of like commercial type of like little thing that I do tend to like, but I did kind of like it. I did kind of think, okay, that is kind of neat. That is kind of quite 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 an innovative way to kind of like introduce this match. There was a kind of like a through line with this match with CM Punk's supposedly injured knee. We had basically Cody kind of like focusing on this throughout in the kind of like particularly heelish fashion. There's like lots of people like before this match were kind of like speculating the potential of Cody turning heel. I never really kind of like really believed that. And I think that after we had just seen obviously the Bellas turn heel against Paige, it just kind of like reaffirmed my feelings that we weren't gonna see that here. But again, we got quite a lot of kicks out of people's like finishing moves. We had a CM Punk delivering like a GTS, which Cody kicked out. We had Cody applying the crossroads, which CM Punk had kicked out. It's kind of we had basically seen that with earlier on in the Sky and the Morgan match as well. There was a spot where he had basically applied the Oblivion to Liv Morgan, which she kicked out. It's kind of like a trope that's been quite reoccurring with WWE, and I think maybe they can kind of like call it a little bit, just for my like personal taste really, because I feel like it's fine to use kind of like sporadically. And I don't think a logo was a major problem here. I think maybe the reason why maybe it didn't land quite as effectively to me is because we've seen like WWE matches in quite recent memory where it seems to be that where it seems to be like conducted largely of just sort of like, I'll sort of perform your move and you perform my move, and that. So just kind of like off the back of that, it sort of just made me kind of like feel okay, I'm kind of like over it. But also I kind of like feel like you want you want kind of like somebody's like finishing moves to be quite individual to them. Do you know what I mean? You want it to be quite specific to them, and you want it to kind of like land. You don't want necessarily, you want to generate the maybe this feeling of, if somebody applies a finishing move, you want to emote that reaction in the audience of, oh my god, I just hit this move, so like I could win. So that when you get the 1-2 ooh after that, you go, ooh, like, I thought that might have been it. Whereas here, I think it's maybe kind of like become a little bit overused to the point where it doesn't really have that effect. It was like that with the Io Sky and Liv Morgan match when Io Sky hit the Oblivion Liv Morgan. Never was there a time where I thought, oh my god, Io Sky could actually win this with Liv Morgan's move. So yeah, it's just that basically like a rule of kind of like diminishing returns type thing. So yeah, just for my personal take, I would say like WWE maybe could kind of like call it a little bit with that, and maybe just use it a little bit more sparingly. But we did have CM Punk eventually picking up a win, and we basically ended up CM Punk picking up a win after Randy Orton made his return. He delivered an RKO to Cody. CM Punk was basically laid out on the outside of the ring, so he didn't kind of like see us, and then he basically came in. He delivered the GTS to Cody Rhodes to pick up a 1-2-3. So obviously we're kind of like going into that, which I'm kind of like all here for. I said in my predictions video that if Randy was medically cleared to return, then absolutely this is as good a time as any to kind of like have it. It doesn't make any real sense to kind of like stand on ceremony. So yeah, interested to see the pickup of this Cody and Randy feud from here on out. And then finally, we got to our main event, which was Oberfemi against Brock Lesnar in Hell in a Cell. And I know that this was a match that quite a few fans were hoping would be the main event, which all I can say is, well, your wishes were answered. I personally was like happy for it to be the main event, but I wasn't dead set on like, feeling like this had to be the main event. All I was really kind of like hoping for was that this wasn't included on the first hour, just because although it's not really reliant on, although it's not really doesn't really apply to me, basically watching it from England, so like from on Netflix, but just for people who kind of like maybe streaming it over in the States through like ESPN, where like the first hour was free, I believe, and then basically they kind of like use as a catalyst to kind of like make you buy into it for the rest of the event. I felt like maybe if this was included in the first hour in that respect, there might have been a little bit censoring of this match, for lack of a better word. So yeah, I was kind of like, I was just kind of like hoping that this kind of like took place outside of our first hour, which which it ultimately did. I still think in terms of maybe there were maybe some people who might still be disappointed about this, because I think like a lot of people were kind of hoping that if this was the main event and we might get some really gnarly stuff, we might get some blood, which we didn't get. But ultimately I do think that this match did end up being kind of like everything essentially that it needed to be. We did have Obafemi looking particularly strong here. We did have like these spots where Brock had delivered like these 3 F5s, and Oba had kicked out. We had basically a spot where also where Brock had kicked out, where Obafemi had delivered this fall from grace, and Brock Lesnar had kicked out on that. And then basically just in like the final stages of this match, we had Brock Lesnar kind of like tearing up kind of like part of the ring to kind of like expose the floorboards. Then we had a nice little throwback to the whole Brock Lesnar defeating the Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania, where after he had pulled the part of the ring to expose the floorboards, he had basically delivered this tombstone pile driver to Obafemi on the wood, and then he had basically covered Obafemi by basically crossing his arms like across his chest. So it was like a nice little kind of like throwback there, and Obafemi kind of kicked out of that as well. And then we basically had Brock Lesnar pick up a chair, go to hit Obafemi with a chair. Obafemi had punched the chair out of his hands before delivering his fall from grace, which was just outside of the wooded area. But yeah, we're still able to kind of like pick up 1, 2, 3 for a win. Like I said, there wasn't really a doubt in my mind that this was the right decision. I felt like all day long it was the right decision. I felt the whole like point of this feud, the whole through line of this feud was to be a kind of like a passing of a torch moment, and that's essentially what we got here. We got that basically essentially being amplified by this like little post-match segment where Brock Lesnar returned to ring and shaked and embraced Obafemi, just kind of like cementing that little kind of like passing of a torch. So that was a really nice moment. So yeah, I mean, all in all, guys, yeah, I for somebody who wasn't particularly a big fan of the build to this SummerSlam, and therefore wasn't really necessarily as pumped as maybe I should be going into SummerSlam. And obviously we're only halfway through, but yeah, I did enjoy this first night of SummerSlam. I gotta say, I thought that this was a pretty solid show. I feel like that. And another concern that people maybe had going into this night one, that we were going to get this like repeat of like WrestleMania night one, where we just got like way too many like commercials and way too much kind of like filler and not enough wrestling. And it did feel like that was the case here. I think the pacing was okay. It ticked by okay. So yeah, it seems to be at least like WWE have kind of like listened to maybe like the fans and the feedback in terms of so yeah, all in all, guys, yeah, I had myself a pretty good time with night one. Yeah, so yeah, here's to night two. So yeah, thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please feel free to let me know then in the comment section about what your own thoughts on this first night of SummerSlam was. And as always, I will see you guys on the next video. You guys take care.